Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about something called Node Package Manager. The acronym will be NPM. And when you download Node.js, it comes along with the NPM command line interface. And so there's a whole set of commands that we can run to install packages, more specifically third-party packages. And these are just packages that other developers have created, companies have created. They put them up in the cloud or put them up in a hosted service. You can pull these packages down into your own development environment and begin to use some of the functionality. So we'll talk about a little bit more about what is NPM. We'll talk about this thing called the package.json file and what the purpose of the package.json file is. And then we'll look at some commonly used commands, and then we'll get some practice with implementing a third-party module, such as there's one called Nodejs, there's Unique. And the one that we're going to take a look at is called bycrypt. It's a very useful module when you're doing password encryption. So let's talk about what is NPM. All right, to better understand NPM, let's actually head over to the website and then look at what NPM has to say for itself. So here's npmjs.com. And I would invite you to go to this website, read more about NPS. You could create an account. You can begin to create your own packages that other people can use. But if you scroll down here, NPM is one of the largest software registries. A lot of other languages have registries. I think for not Python, but for PHP, there's something called Composer. For C#, there's something called NuGet. So there's a number of different code package managers that various languages have, where you can bring down code. You can actually create your own account and push up your code and allow others to use it. NPM is one of the world's largest registries that developers use, and it's quite powerful. Now we're going to get some experience with using the NPM command line interface. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up, I've created a new folder called npm_example or EX. And to use a third-party module such as Express, or to use what we're going to use one called Nodejs and bycrypt. And in this video, we're going to specifically use one called bycrypt. To use bycrypt, we have to install it, right? So before we install it here, let me just talk about something called the package.json, and then talk about a few commands that NPM has to offer. So I'm going to bring up my terminal, Control-tilde, and I'll just do a git bash terminal. It's going to take a while. It always takes a while for my terminal to pop up. Let's give it a minute. While that's while that's loading up here, the first command I'm going to run is called npm -- version. So here, I just want to see what version of NPM I'm using. I'm using version 8.19.2. If you ever get stuck and like, what are all the commands that are available to me? You can run this command and say npm -- and then help. And what that's going to do is show you all of the different commands you can use. And you can do that for Git. You can do that for Node, and it'll show you various commands that are at your disposal when using these command line interface tools. So here you can see npm install, which is what we're going to use. And there's some other commands that we can become familiar with, do some research on. So the next command we're going to do is I'm going to clear my terminal, and I'm going to run a command called npm and then init. Kind of like npm or git init, we're going to initialize npm. And what's going to happen here is that it's going to walk us through this configuration for the package.json file. So we'll say npm init, and it's going to ask us a series of questions. So the first one here is give this a package name, because remember, in npmjs.com, there's tons of different packages, and this is where we can name our specific package, and we just call this npm. Let's call this npm example 1.00. You can really skip through all of this description, I'm going to put NA. Let's put test.js. NA for now. And you can always go back and alter this. I'll put my initial and last name. Let's put MIT. And does this look right? So what it's going to give you is it's going to take the content that you entered and put it into what we call JSON format, JavaScript object notation, which is a popular data exchange format. And we can always go back and alter this content. So we'll say yes, and it's going to create this package.json file. And this package.json file is extremely important. This is going to be the file that helps configure or holds data about your project. And so if you bring down a third-party module into your environment or into your application, this here is going to keep record of all the different packages your application depend upon. And so you'll see that all the information that we entered in that configuration is listed here in this package.json. But let's say, for instance, we didn't want to go through that whole process of entering our information. Let's go ahead and delete this package.json file. There's a shorter way. If we're short on time and we just want to get right to the development of our application, let me clear my terminal. We can just say npm init -y, and what that's going to do is it's going to bypass asking you all those questions and just create the package.json file. And we can go ahead and we can go into this file and change data if we need to. So if we wanted to, we can go and just name this example, and we can say that our starting file is going to be package.js and so forth. So this package.json file is important. It's going to basically have all the contain the information in terms of all the different packages that our program or our application will depend upon. So let's go ahead and install a package, do a quick example of it, and then that'll be the end of this video. So, all right, so the package I'm going to install is called bycrypt, and bycrypt is a very important package when you're doing encryption of passwords. Let's say, for instance, you create a user account, and that user is going to enter a password. We typically don't save the password that the user enter into our database. We save it in this particular hash. We run that password through a hashing algorithm, and it comes out with this unique string or this hash value that's encrypted. And so and that's what gets saved into the database. And then when the user logs in, we'll take their password, compare it against the hash, and determine if they're a user in our database. So to install that package, let's actually go back to npm.js.com, and then we're going to search for bycrypt. Okay. And you do want to pay attention to like the popularity of the package, the quality, and there's some other stats or information about the package. This is important because you don't want to download a package that's not popular. People could put erroneous code in a package and push it up to NPM. That doesn't mean that it's safe. You want to be very careful in terms of what particular packages you download into your own environment or your application. So bycrypt is well known. The quality is quite high. It's very popular. And then there's some maintenance to this as well. So we click on bycrypt, and typically they kind of give you an example of how to use this particular module. So here's an example. And what I'm going to do is just copy this for quicker iteration. So I'll bring this into our environment. Before we do that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's actually install. So whenever you're using a third-party module, you need to install the actual package. So I'm going to copy this install command and go back to my editor. And so you'll see that I have npm I bycrypt. I is short for install. And so I would say get into the practice of just writing install. And then bycrypt is the name of the package that I want to install. And I can just hit enter at this point. Did I spell it correctly? Let me make sure I spelled it correctly here. Okay. Oh, I misspelled it. I had bycrypt when it should have been bcrypt. All right, so that package is installed. Whenever you install a package, it's going to create this node modules folder. And in that node modules folder, it's going to contain some of the different dependencies that your application depend upon. So basically, it's going to install some additional code that your module depend upon, or your package depend upon. So here you look at the package.json file. I'm going to save this. Actually, I'm not going to save that because I installed a package, but let me just don't save that and then go back to package.json. And if you look at line 12, you'll see that it added this new key value or key called dependencies, and then it has bycrypt. And so with this here, bycrypt, it allows us to, it keeps track of all of the different packages that we've installed into our project folder. So it installed bycrypt version 5.1.0. And so whenever you download your project and you run npm install, it'll look at the dependencies and say, hey, we need to install bycrypt into this application. So bycrypt is installed, but that doesn't mean that we have access to it yet. So let's create a file here. I'm gonna call this file bycrypt.js. And this is where I'm gonna go back to bycrypt and use some of that starter code or that sample code that they give you. So I'm gonna copy this here. Remember that require keyword is needed to bring in the module. I'll paste that in. And this salt rounds here is the idea of salting is that salting adds an element of randomness to the hashing algorithm. Believe it or not, there are some hackers that can reverse engineer an encrypted password or reverse engineer the hashing algorithm and how it actually encrypted your password. And so salt helps prevent against something called rainbow table attacks. And so it just basically adds an element of randomness to it. So let me go back here and add another snippet of code. And let's paste that here. So this video is getting quite long. What I'm going to do is do a part 1 and part 2. So in part 2, I'll just finish off this example, and then I'll probably introduce another module. I'll install another module just to go over the concept again, and then we'll go on to the next video. So stay tuned for part B of this video, where I'm going to finish out this example and then go over adding another package dependency or adding another package into our environment.